Hi, this is Sue Greenwald with Awakened Stories. I'm here today with Deanna Carr with the Mystical Moonlight. Hey, Deanna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Today's surprise topic is Harry Houdini, okay? And this is a weird one because I don't usually think about Harry Houdini at all or ever. And it's weird because I got the hit to talk about him and then I got excited for a while. After looking at an overview of his story, it's not super exciting because I don't really like magic that much, but we're going to talk about it. And I thought we'd go point by point if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. So, like we had done before, I had kind of done a little summary of the life story as I know it, which is
hmm
Harry Houdini was like in the early 1900s, and he was a world famous magician. And he was known for getting himself out of like handcuffs and boxes and doing all sorts of crazy tricks. He was world renowned. And that's kind of what I know. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that's what he's known for.
Yeah. So like we don't really know him, but he was supposed to be this guy that could get out of any situation, like no matter how bad it was. Okay. So
hmm
is that a true story? I mean, could he get out of these situations or did he cheat?
No, he could. Um, he did have a cheat code.
Okay.
But he was getting himself out of the
Okay,
situations.
cool. Well, let's go point by point then. Okay, so stop me when I've gone to a point where you need to make a point yourself. Okay, so he was born 1874 as Eric Weitz, Weizz, in what's
hmm
now, well, it was Austria-Hungary at the time. His family came to America and they landed in, I want to say it was Wisconsin. It was kind of in the Midwest. His father was a Zionist rabbi. Okay, little
hmm
red flag there. Okay, he came over to Wisconsin and they had a big family. They moved around a couple of times, but they went into poverty and had no money, a bunch of kids, and ended up eventually in New York City. Okay, so that's the storyline of his childhood. And he, of course, was anxious to make money, so he was doing all sorts of tricks. He started out with card tricks. He didn't really get much fame, or, no one really took notice of him at all.
Yeah.
What really happened is that, well, he was at the World's Fair in Chicago, I think it was 1898.
hmm
So he was there with his brother. He did get some notice there. But where he really became world famous was in London when he did a trick. They made these special handcuffs that I guess the key to get out of these handcuffs was six inches long. And these handcuffs were special, handmade, blah, blah, blah. And it took him, I think, over an hour to get out of those handcuffs, but he eventually did it.
hmm
And he was behind a screen, but that's where he became world famous, right? So that was roughly 1900.
Yeah,
So,
he started off, like you said, everything was, pretty accurate. The weird spots started happening when he was in New York. When they moved to New York, that's when everything started to switch. Now, they were in poverty, and obviously, you are going to do some crazy stuff to get money when you're desperate. And that's where he came up with these ideas of let me create magic. And see what draws people in. Now, you have to be spectacular right now to bring in people to watch you, work with cards. But it was an idea of what is dramatic enough. And he did happen to meet somebody that was going to sponsor him. He did bring up this idea of, if I do this, what kind of money could it bring in? So it's kind of just like this, conversation that ended up leading to him being sponsored to do these. Because, I mean, you do have to have not only knowledge of what materials you're using and manipulation, but also you have to have the equipment correct to do this. Now, excuse me, there are other magicians that are definitely warlocks. He was not necessarily a warlock. He was more of somebody that dabbled in the arts. And he did have cheat codes in some of the mechanisms. Now, he did actually escape from each, issue per se, but there most of them there was a backup just in case. So that way he could still look good, but in case he
Yeah.
really couldn't do the trick, nobody would really know.
Okay. That I guess was where I wanted to go because like I actually thought he died while doing a trick. That's the way my memory held it.
Mhm.
But what I researched is that's not how he died. But he was supposed to get out of almost any spot. Like
Yeah.
so okay, so he performed at the World's Fair in Chicago. I think again it was 1898 with his brother, and there he met Wilhelmina. I'm probably screwing up the name, Bess Rayner, which became his wife and
Yeah.
his assistant. Okay, so
Mhm.
she was also in the magic realm, if you will, and she did seances and like psychic readings. Okay.
Mhm.
So he got married, okay. Then he went to London to do this handcuff thing, and that's where he really got famous. Like everyone saw that and they went wild, and he was overly booked and popular, and he made a ton of money. Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause he was in poverty until that point when he became well known.
Mhm.
So then everybody tried to come up with ideas of, how can we have him do these tricks and get out and be sends, like that. It was a big deal back then. This was a big
Yeah.
deal. Like, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so when he did that handcuff trick, it was in Scotland Yard. And so there were a lot of policemen and people of authority in that audience that saw him.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's how he became booked at other places. All right. So as time went on, his acts became increasingly bold and more like out there, like more daring. And like I said, he was extremely popular and well compensated for that.
Yeah, because I mean, one, you can't keep it the same. I mean, people will get bored with it.
Yeah, yeah,
So if that's where people are, what people are liking, how does he stay with that theme, but also make it more exaggerated so that way it keeps people inclined to watch him
yeah,
and or hire him. So it definitely was a marketing promotion for himself.
yeah,
Um, Now, some of them, it wasn't necessarily his idea. It was people, bringing up the ideas to him, like, hey, why don't you try this? So some of the things that he wasn't always comfortable with, but like I said, there was usually a back door or way for him to get out just in case. And like you said, you thought that, he actually died while performing.
right.
I did too.
Yeah,
Um, but I do know that he didn't die that way, but it is what people remember about him is he died this way. So
yeah,
it is what people remember about him. Like he did so much daring acts that he died during it.
yeah,
Um, and that was actually a leverage for marketing also. I mean, when you think about it, even with art in itself, you have these artists that have created amazing pieces, but it's not as valuable until the person has died. So it's same thing for his type of art is once he died, it became more popular, it became more famous. Word went around the block that he died, but he was still, getting paid. He was
right,
still alive.
right, right. So he did die though, right? He is dead.
Yeah, now he is.
Just want to
But
make sure.
not from what, we were told.
Not from the tricks and all that. So one of the things I noticed is he had started a society of I think it was called American Magicians, and that became like I think it's still out there, this Society of American Magicians.
Mhm.
So once he became famous, people flocked to that group
Yeah.
and they supported him and all of that. But he was very involved in the image and the showmanship of everything, you know.
Yeah.
Also, it seemed like he was like he sued a lot of people for copying his tricks or this or that. So, he sued people and he wrote articles against them. I think he wrote a book or something against somebody. So he was
It was a way to get
very,
money.
yeah, yeah. It's like sensationalism.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He wanted the money, and if somebody was going to try to copy off of him to get famous,
yeah,
that didn't suit him. Now, he did, in the beginning, he was using tricks other people did to try and get famous himself. So
right.
it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like you kind of reap what you sow.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, he was a little grimy on that sense of, I'm going to take this fame and see how far I can ride it.
Right.
And there was a little bit of play with the dark magic in the background. I mean, you do have the wife that is a psychic. We all know she wasn't. She did participate in dark magic, so
Okay. Well,
that did bring in,
yeah.
but
Okay. Well, let's talk about it. So she did seances, and even after he died, she was doing seances, waiting for him to come back and talk to her. She never got his message. So
yeah,
she
she
was a
wasn't going
fake.
to.
Yeah, yeah. So she was just doing it for the funding, right?
For the funding, she like I said, she did participate in dark magic.
Yeah.
So there was stuff she was doing that was more like rituals, to bring in the fame, the funding, and that kind of thing. Versus, a real psychic's not going to be doing it like that. At least a good real psychic.
Yeah, yeah.
So she was really more on the dark side, and that is also how he kind of came to be famous in a sense, because she did do more of the dark magic rituals to bring in that materialistic energy.
Okay. Okay. And yeah, like I said, he became wildly wealthy from
Yeah,
this, you know.
yeah.
So one of the tricks he did is they built a oversized milk can. So way back when, before my time even, they had these metal milk cans with lids that fit on kind of snug, and they
Yeah.
were maybe 2 or 3 feet tall, and I don't know how many gallons they would hold, but they built one big enough for him to fit in it, and they filled it with water, and then he had to
Mhm,
escape from that. All right.
mhm.
So he would do things like have the audience hold their breath while he was working on getting out, that kind of thing. Another thing he's famous for is the straitjacket. So they would put a straitjacket on him, he could get out of it. And then they did one where he was upside down, hanging from a crane in a straitjacket, and he got out of that. So those are some of the tricks he conceived of. He also did some with big, like custom made cubes of water that he would be inside and have to get out of.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So unique things for the time, definitely.
Yeah, he played with what people wanted to
Yeah.
see. Like you said, with the holding your breath, making them feel what he's feeling, it really enticed them because, okay, if I'm having a hard time, he must be having a super hard time.
Yeah.
Um, there were some like with the milk or the milk jug one, he did have a type of breathing mechanism, so it wasn't really him holding his breath for that long. So he did have subtle things that, it made it look one way to the audience, but he was able to survive.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Mm.
Well, more like I said, he made it his business to defraud spiritualists, okay, psychics at the time, mediums and psychics.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he made it part of his business to do that. He did a lot of lawsuits against other people for using his tricks. And he bought himself a plane and flew across Australia and did tricks all over Australia and
Hmm.
gained popularity there. And I'm trying to think what other salient points about his life. He was a practicing Freemason. Okay, so that's how he became well connected as well,
Yeah,
right?
makes
So,
sense.
yeah. So, here's how he died. He died in 1926, and he was doing a show, and he was backstage. I guess he had broken his ankle or something, and some lady came up and says, "I'm going to punch you in the gut," for some reason. He said, okay, go ahead. And she punched him like 2 or 3 times in the abdomen. And the theory is that he had burst his appendix. So he might have had that before she punched him, or
Hmm.
maybe the punch helped hasten that along, but he died a couple of days later. So that's how he died.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought it was like he was in water. In one of these tricks, he was also dumped into the East River in New York City to do like a lot of underwater stuff. Okay, so he always able to get out of these irons and the chains and the handcuffs and the straitjackets and this and that too.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
he liked the more elaborate it was, the
Yeah,
more people were enticed to one watch it, but to want him to come back because, well, what's the
yeah,
next stunt gonna be?
yeah,
So it's a way for him to market himself and to bring
yeah,
in new people to watch him.
yeah.
And that's really how his word spread. But he was doing some stuff behind scenes. I mean, most of it was just for him to keep his name, keep a name for himself. But there was stuff like, with the Masons, he was on, certain missions to, um, I don't know what you want to call it. I don't even say bring the truth out. It was to misinform, but it was also to find people with abilities. So, you know how I said earlier when we talk about magicians, there are magicians out there that are definitely warlocks. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, you see their work and you're like, I know what you are. Um, he was definitely not one of them, but it's being a magician and having that,
Access.
access to other magicians and seeing what they can bring in is a great way to find the actual spiritual and ones that can manipulate energy around. And we're not just talking about regular energy, we're actually talking about substantial things. There's actually a movie. It is like the perfect movie for this scenario. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to look it up. It's a Disney movie, and it's literally what I'm just talking about. There's a magic camp and they go around and they're trying to find magicians, and one of them is actually a warlock, and they bring him in, and they test them out, see what their powers are, see what they can do magicianly wise, whatever you want to call it. And the one is actually a warlock, and then they want to use the power for something. I'm gonna have to find it because I know it's a movie. I've seen it, and this is like literally what we're talking about.
Okay.
Um, but that's how they were able to find people with these actual gifts. And talking about dark magic, they could actually pull the energy from these people and manipulate and use it for whatever they needed.
Okay. That's why we're talking about this. Okay, so as we've been doing this, my heart sank like, oh, this is just a boring story. Why are we talking about this? That's
Yeah.
okay, because there are people out there, and we're going to say humans, that have
Mhm.
the ability to change their body, like their body shape, their body size. They have ability to breathe underwater or whatever. So
Mhm.
I was hoping you were going to say he was one of them.
Yeah.
But
No, he is definitely not one of them. There would be other signs that would say that. He did use breathing apparatuses and stuff like that during his pieces. Um, but like I said, there are other ones that are actually really famous, and you just have a knowing like this guy is a
yeah,
warlock. Like we've seen a few magicians, we're like,
yeah.
yep.
There was a guy in New York City years ago. I was in New York, and he was frozen in a block of ice in the picture window of something. I don't remember what.
Yeah, he's pretty famous too.
Yeah, I don't know the guy's name, but that creeped me out. You know.
Yeah, he does a lot of frozen stuff, a lot of ice and water for some
Yeah,
reason.
yeah. And I know some people are they can lower their heart rate, their breathing, and blah blah blah,
Mhm.
and survive that way. But that just creeps me out. Like I can't even
And
look at that, you know.
yeah, like why do you really need to do this?
Yeah, but they come up with gimmicks to get famous.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
it works. Some of them get very famous.
Yeah.
It provides a life, and they can do, some of them actually really enjoy that because they feel different and unique,
Yeah.
whereas it used to be something very crazy and abnormal.
Yeah.
So it does give them kind of a sense of purpose in this realm
Yeah.
because they do feel out of place.
Yeah.
Not saying that's all of them, but for the most part, a lot of them just like to do the magic because it feels more comforting to them.
Okay. Okay. So if you come up with that Disney movie, send it over to me and we'll put it in the description of
I
this.
am going to find it and you guys are
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to watch it and you'll be like, oh my gosh, it makes sense now.
And so again, this is a story that's not far from the truth then,
Mhm.
okay?
Yeah.
Except there was black magic used by his wife then for her mediumship events. So
Yeah.
what came out of that? Is there anything we need to know about that, about the wife?
Um, it's really just a back and forth relationship to really progress each other's careers. And then it kind of goes hand in hand with looking for people that have the spiritual powers and being able to manipulate and take them.
Okay,
Because you can work with energy, you can manipulate energy, and if you do it on the darker side, you do have more access to what you can control with it.
right,
That's why, even if you talk about different types of like dark magic, they do have control of different materials and objects. And we're
right.
not really going to talk too much about that,
Yeah,
but
okay.
they have more access to gaining full control over powers
Yep, okay,
versus somebody that's really just trying to help progress the earth and bring the energy upwards.
right. And so the reason he was a Freemason then was to hunt out other magicians with true
Mhm.
magical ability, which he probably came across a few in his creating
Yeah.
of the society. What happened to those magicians?
If they were true, they were used in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
Mhm.
In a nefarious fashion.
Yes.
Mm-mm-mm. Okay, interesting.
Mhm.
Anything I need to know about that? Anything else we should say about that particular circumstance?
I can't really think of anything specifically for that.
Yeah.
They wanted as much control as possible. Now his idea was to manipulate the idea of himself to gain financial resources, but greed definitely got in the way, and it kind of just kept snowballing downwards.
Right.
Um, and that's pretty much what started to run him was the greed. Like, how much can I get? How much
Yeah.
access can I get off of something so simplistic to him? And it really just that kind of took him out of control itself was, it to him it was something, easy, then it became more elaborate, and it just was like, how much power can I gain from
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, thank you very much for your insight on this story. And
Of
we'll be
course.
talking again, I'm sure, about things with lots more corruption in them. I mean, there was some corruption here, but I wanted a lot more.
Yeah. Well, we can always talk more about the corruption. It's
Yeah.
definitely easy to find.
Well, usually we get these stories to talk about. There's a darn good reason. And here there
Yeah.
are reasons, but nothing that like maybe was earth shattering. Although, again, these points in time are they blossom out. So let's say they hunted down these magicians with true magical ability and
Mhm.
they use their ability or they turn them or whatever, and the wife did these things. That blossoms out in time and affects us now. It
Yeah.
changes the course of history. So that is important to know about, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just thinking about, being able to manipulate somebody's power and take it in for yourself. What were they truly doing with that?
Yeah.
And then because I talked about him having a sponsor earlier, what were they actually sponsoring? So there's a lot of other facts that go into the background scene of, him himself. Um, I, he did do, because your initial question was, did he do this or was there something behind it? So he definitely did he did the act, but there was a lot of corruption behind it. I think the biggest point to take away is, he was able to find out and hunt down these magicians and use their powers for, different reasons. They're all, like we said earlier, they all have different accessibility to manipulation of energies and materials. So that really did help form, what they were specifically being used for.
Right.
It's not like one suits all. It's not like they all went to like a magic camp and they just disappeared. They were used later on for different reasons.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
If anything further along those lines comes to light, let me know. All right.
Of course. And then if people have questions, that's always the best way to advance these because, we just kind of start talking and then other people have ideas. So it definitely helps when
Yeah,
people have comments.
definitely. Many heads are better than two.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.